I'll call this meeting to order. Let's see, second item on the agenda, appointment of alternates. Charles, would you like to serve for the vacancy?
Sure.
Item number 3 on the agenda, public hearings. There are none. Item number 4 on the agenda, old business. Application number 17-24 of Casey Jones, Ensign Bickford Aerospace and Defense Company. Applicant, Dino Nobel, Inc., owner, for the construction of concrete block walls adjacent to existing buildings on the property located at 632 Hop Meadow Street, Assessors Map G11, Block 132, Lot 052, excuse me, Zone R40 OS. Gentlemen.
My name is Jim Thompson, Buck Engineers in Hartford. Mr. Jones could not make it, he's on other business, where is it? West Virginia, California?
Yeah, he's in Moore Park.
This is Mr. Geldhauser, he's also from Ensign Bickford. So we're there for tonight. Mr. Jones would like to come, but he's our boss. But I'll explain to what we're doing. There are two buildings, buildings number 5 and 6, which are located on the Ensign Bickford property between the railroad tracks and the river. This is north up here, railroad tracks running through here. It's about 1,200 feet to the river. I'm sorry, 600 feet to the river from the railroad tracks. And this area is all different types of wetland soils. It's the typical loams on top and some sand. Then you get into real sandy soil. Presently, there are several buildings out here that are used for, I guess they're used for testing things, aren't they?
Yes, building 106 is our testing facility and 105 is a process building.
Right. Those two buildings, 5 and 6, have been required by, I think it was the federal government,
DOD.
Department of Defense, to place protective walls around them so that if there is an accidental explosion, the residual of the explosion doesn't leave the property.
It's primarily to contain shrapnel,
Right.
given the proximity to the river and the residential area across the river. We need to contain that.
It kind of makes sense. Then the question is, how do you do it? We, Buck have designed a lot of these things up on Powder Hill. You've heard of Powder Hill. We've got a lot of, what would you call them there? Those are
Magazines.
magazines, right? Most of them are underground,
Yes.
covered with dirt, but we have concrete walls around them, and they're set up so that the weakest part of the whole thing, which is the doors getting in and out, blast. Anything, if there is an explosion, it goes in a certain direction. All those directions were worked out so that it wouldn't leave the property. We're doing the same type of thing here, except we're using the concrete walls without any fill behind them. And the reason for that is that this is a floodplain. You have the main Farmington River here flowing north, and on either side of the Farmington River you have a floodplain. When the water level builds up in the river itself, starts exceeding the capacity of the river, it floods out in this area here. So, it's not a smart idea to put a great big bulky thing out here. You want it so that the water can get by you easily. Otherwise, if you put a bulky structure up here like an embankment, things like that, it cuts down on the flowage area, so to speak. so that it raises the water level upstream. Not good. That's why we use just the bare concrete walls. It gives us the strength that we need. And what we did was we used these, we call them mafia blocks. You've probably heard that before. And we use the mafia blocks because, first of all, they're all 2 feet thick. You know, they weigh almost 2 tons apiece. 2 tons, no, I'm sorry, 1 ton. 1,800 pounds. 1,800 pounds. So we use all of these blocks here and we're putting them down just like you'd build a brick wall. Except the bricks are big. Once we put these in, we then checked to make sure that they didn't reduce the flowage down the river. That's what these cross sections are here. We took a section, cross section all the way across in both places and checked to see how much area that we lost. Losing area of flowage means that the flowage has to speed up a bit. If it speeds up, it has to raise up. We found out that just using these areas here on the west side, the increase or the decrease in flowage capacity was less than 1% at the 100-year storm. That's a good sized storm. We also found, if you look at the lowest, the most southerly cross section here, we took it through an existing natural embankment. That embankment causes a greater impediment to flow than these other 2 walls combined. So that's why we used what we have here. We've also put openings between the blocks so that up to the level of the 100-year storm, we've got areas that can flow between the blocks. We did not put in, if you look at the cross-section of the structure, we take out the topsoil and the subsoil because if we leave that topsoil or subsoil there, it's compressible, and all of a sudden we wind up with a wall that doesn't look right. So we replace that with processed stone. Trap rock processed stone. Does everybody know what trap rock is? It's the best. We're lucky in Connecticut, we got something good that comes out of the ground, and it's trap rock. But we use that processed stone, and we separate it from the subsoil and the other stone base on top of it with filter fabric. And believe me, that sets up into a flexible pad that almost exceeds the strength of concrete by itself. But what we're doing here is we're minimizing the amount of material we take out, minimizing the amount of digging we do there. All of that excess material will be taken off of the site here, so there'll be no net deposit of material on the site other than the block walls. What's your schedule for doing these things?
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible.
Yes.
Uncle Sam has spoken, and we're kind of at their command. Do you have any questions about it?
How does it happen that DOD is your regulator? What's the scope of their oversight?
That's a very good question, and KC would probably be able to answer that better, but as far as I know, I've only been there for a year. I'm a facility engineering manager. And what I was told, they are the ones who dictate how much explosives we can have in certain buildings for whatever reason. And in this case, because of our production requirements that ask us or tell us that we have to have a certain poundage in each building, these two particular buildings, it will increase. And they dictated to us that we have to do this. Apparently, from what I understand, they put together a virtual model of what could possibly happen or how far the shrapnel could travel, given an event, an incident. And they came back with us and said, this is what you need to do. Who these folks are, I honestly couldn't tell you. It was quite a group though, and this has been, they came into our facility, I think it was back in early spring, to start this audit, if you will. And this is one of the last things that they discovered and came up with and are now telling us we need to do.
I've been working for EB since '56, and we've designed a lot of the other facilities in the factory where we have certain quantity of explosive material, and we can only put certain number of people in there, and they can work with the explosives in cells. The cells are designed, if there's an explosion, everything goes up through the roof.
That's correct.
Right.
That is correct. It goes up or it goes out, and if it goes
Right.
out, then that's when we have our other walls that
Right.
are there now.
But it's always been the DOD that's been giving us the orders, right from the start. Well, start when I worked there, but anyway.
They actually write the book, if you will, on how to handle and produce explosives. So everything that we do on our buildings, whether it's electric or pneumatic, it has to all can be part of this regulatory commission that's part of the DOD.
And the soil you're taking out to put in the footings, is that being trucked out the same day? Or you
We'll only need enough just to backfill around here, just keep a little bit, but everything else is gonna be taken out.
taken out the same day or stored?
Yeah, it could be taken out the same day, there's no need for keeping it there.
We could have the excavator do that, no issue. No issue at all.
Otherwise, one would want to have some formality about how it was stored and
Agreed.
Substances and all.
Yep.
No need for that. No.
It looks like the floor of the buildings there is right at the 100-year flood elevation.
Yes,
Is that right?
That's right.
Have you ever had the flood come up, or the river level come up that high?
I haven't seen it.
Actually, excuse me, Jim, those two buildings are actually elevated. They're about 4 to 5 feet above the ground, you know, they're on mounds. And from what I understand, it's gotten that high. Yeah, we've had some of the buildings that are further from the river have been flooded. I know in 55, of course, it was just that whole area was a mess.
Yeah, you're right, 55 was very bad.
Yeah, but there was another incident not too long ago, I think about 12 years ago, that we had some flooding. Nothing bad, you know, the walls got wet, there was mud in the building, but the explosives weren't in jeopardy. It was just the work areas were wet.
These elevations, by the way, are set by FEMA. We use all of their data, 100%.
Right, and it seems to match up pretty well with your
Yes,
experience.
yeah.
Are the the mafia blocks, are they going to be joined together in any way, or are they just going to be
Just
stacked?
sitting there, just sitting there. We've used these mafia blocks in a lot of other installations for big use is for storage of sand, salted sand and things like that, where we used on the highway, right? We have the mafia box going up higher than this, and we use that, put the sanding in, and then we have these fabric covers over the whole. And I know we built them in Burlington, and we got some up in Ellington. They work very good, even with no other support behind them. It's the weight. It's just like the old days, you build a big stone wall. You know, most of the dams in the state that were built during the, when the state was started, that's what they are. All big masonry stone dams, no mortar, no nothing in it. And it was just the weight of the structure that kept it together. We're still building chimneys like that, would you believe? They're what they call gravity structures. And they would stand, you get enough weight in there, and it holds up to winds of 150 miles an hour. But,
Did you consider any other design for the?
no, we did not, no. The important thing is the concrete. You know, the only other thing that we could have possibly there is a big wooden, earthen embankment. But the embankment would be so large, and it wouldn't, it's something that wears away, so to speak. You get a big storm flowing through there, and all of a sudden you lose some of your embankment. And if you have an explosion, it's going to tear away some of your embankment too. The soil on top is light compared to this concrete. The only other thing that I would consider would be poured walls. But then you get involved with foundations going down 4 feet, and it's not a heck of a lot better.
How long do you think it will take you to assemble the walls?
Well, I would think you'd probably wind up a couple weeks on each wall. The way they'll do it, they'll come in and they'll prepare the base, right? The walls will come in and they will go right from the truck they're being delivered on, right where they're going to be. There's no storage of these things, you know. Doesn't make any sense. You take it off the truck, you put it where it belongs.
Yeah, I think our excavator, Hugh Caldwell, estimated about 280 blocks total. And given their weight, we can only move a certain amount on one flatbed.
Okay.
And we can only have, and it's a tight area back there, so we'll probably be bringing one flatbed in at a time. So they'll probably have like an assembly line just going through, one in, one out, one in, one out. So it's going to be time consuming. And to your point, I think once the base is established and it's in place and ready to go, it's a matter of just putting it together.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 2 weeks I think was reasonable. And of course, they'll do the prep work prior, and then it's just put it up.
It looks like you have existing, at least compacted soil roadways into these buildings, so delivering the material and so forth won't churn up the soil
Oh,
and create
no,
erosion.
not at all, no.
I just one thing for the record. A corner of the southern wall clips the sewer easement. Both yesterday and today, I've had extensive discussions with Water Pollution Control Authority on this. That sewer, the pipe that's there, it's at a depth between 10 and 12 feet below the surface. Water Pollution Control Authority they're assuming it's to the east of where the proposed wall will be within the easement. But I've asked that the easement and the pipe location be staked in the field prior to the construction activities and I guess who's gonna have to be mindful when he's building that wall in particular to the south. He can't bring his equipment in there over the pipe. He can't store materials, so it'll be a delicate portion of that construction. And WPCA will be involved in inspections, in discussions with the superintendent. They just want to make sure you don't go near that pipe. and do not crush that pipe.
That's a reasonable request.
So, and just
Do
the,
it. We
the
have-
last thing to follow up, because we didn't really talk about the types of soil here. They're alluvial soils, floodplain soils. I talked to the town engineer along with the building official on whether there'd be any concerns with compaction on putting the subbase in. That was really the only concern the building official had. Otherwise, he agreed with the design, treated this as a fence, not as a retaining wall, so hence it doesn't require a footing, et cetera. He will not require a building permit for this, so you will just be dealing with my office and the zoning commission, because under the building code, this is not retaining any material behind it, it's functioning as a fence, and that's it. The last point is, as we've kind of indicated, located within the floodplain. Under the zoning regulations, a special exception is required for any filling and grading within a floodplain. So they will have to, should they get an approval tonight, their next step on the approval process is applying for a special exception with the zoning commission and going through the public hearing process. So we're probably looking at a late January, early February construction time for this project. So the limited nature and erosion sediment control issues associated with it we may not need silt fence hay bales on site, but I would recommend that Hugh can get hold of hay bales or something just in case while you're building this wall that you can at least mobilize quick to address it. Like if we get a warmer February and you get hit with a February thunderstorm, you have something there just in case portions of the site along the wall are exposed soils and are open, especially the fact we're in the floodplain. And that time of year, those type of storms, the floodplain the waters could come up to this area.
One true thing about soil in Connecticut, it's variable. And we, Buck and Buck, will inspect the base. When the contractor goes in and looks at, make sure we get everything down to the level that we want. And at that time, it'll be easy for us to take more out if we have to and just make up the difference in the processed stone. And I don't live too far away. I live in Unionville, so I'm up this way all the time.
Is an Army Corps permit also required?
The disturbance, it's limited disturbance. I don't think by the scope of this project it would. We're extremely limited and it doesn't require state permits. It's just a local review. If we were closer to the river and we had more physical disturbance along the river, I would say that they should consult with the Corps, just to confirm.
Are there any other questions?
Excuse me, Michael, you said that we wouldn't need a permit?
Would not.
Would not.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay.
So if there are no other questions, we'll entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the commission find that this is a regulated activity as it involves construction in the wetlands.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Move further that the commission find that this is not a material activity, a significant activity, in that it does not portend any significant disruption of the soils or the wetland area.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You gentlemen are familiar with the conditions in the staff report.
I am not.
Yes,
That's why he's here.
I read it over thorough, and
They are acceptable to the
they're
applicant.
all acceptable, yes.
I move the commission grant the permit, subject to the special and standard conditions in the staff report, and the additional condition that there be present hay bales or other similar materials satisfactory to staff at the time to deal with the possibility of any precipitation or similar event. Michael?
Do you want to include removal of excess material from the
I
walls.
believe we have that in the second,
Do I have that in?
no storage materials associated with the wall construction.
No, I do not have that in my, I just have the limited area specific to where the limits of work is presented
You-
as number 4.
Condition 3, no storage of materials associated with wall construction is permitted.
No, the storage materials, my concern in there was that if you had the blocks, you had other materials on site, that you're going to be storing it in the floodplain. They indicated they're removing the excess soil from the site. It may
Yes.
be just a simple
Don't you think that's a
excess,
material associated with the wall construction?
well, it's excess material from the excavation specific to that.
Okay. We include in the third special condition excavated material which will not be stored on site.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Application is approved.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You can try to break a bottle against a wall or something like that.
Oh, you need a separate permit for that. You need positive materials.
All right. Moving on, next item on the agenda, new business, receipt of new applications.
We have one new application from the Department of Public Works. It is for removal of sediment in a drainage swale at 15 Brook Drive. There's a drainage swale between two residents. It has been, over time, sediment and other materials built up. Recently, in one of the past storm events, someone's footing drain is connected into this drainage system and it backed up into their house. So Public Works is going out. It's not work in wetlands, but it's immediately adjacent to, I've been out to the site with the crew supervisor. I said, this needs a permit.
Could be an intermittent water course.
It could be. It's really, it doesn't have real define, when you go out there, the channel is not defined. This has been building up for a while now, so. But we'll have more information along with Tom Roy or Kevin Clemens at the next meeting on this.
Some photos, too.
So that's it.
All right, moving on, general commission business. Item number 1, approval of minutes from the November 21st, 2017 regular meeting. Are there any comments on the minutes?
I had none.
Having none, they will not be changed. Item number 2, forestry management discussion and workshop.
Mr. Chairman, the commission chairwoman is unable to attend this evening and has asked us not to treat this matter in her absence. I merely pass that message along.
Is it, I'm sorry, what does that mean? Does that mean not make any decisions or not actually talk about it?
Mike, you had the conversation.
Yeah, her email, what did she say to you? I gave you a copy. Unfortunately, she cannot attend. She would like to postpone the forestry management discussion to the following meeting. So I would say she would prefer that you do nothing tonight.
Okay.
But it's the commission's decision.
I mean, I think that we have people from the public who came specifically for this, and it would be a shame not to give them an opportunity to participate.
Yeah, I would agree that I think there's people here we should listen to it, but we can contain our discussions, but we should hear it, we should get it read into the record, and then we can summarize it also.
The meeting's being televised, so I can advise, if you're going to take input from members of the audience tonight, I can advise Marjorie that she could watch the discussion on Simsbury Community Television, and then obviously you meet in 2 weeks, we could reboot on the actual commission discussion on some of these documents.
I think that seems like a reasonable compromise, given we don't know what other people's schedules are going to be like, so.
Right. I agree.
Yep.
Okay, we'll move forward. Let's see here, we have, several items in our packet, and I'm not sure exactly what's new and what is not new. But we have a copy of the working notes from Charles. We have a letter from Don, that's right. And comments on the working notes from Charles.
Shall we just invite John and Sue to make comments if they wish?
Sure.
From the,
Okay.
Who would like to start?
I'm just here to observe.
Okay.
Okay.
I have been working on that, but it's not finished, so I would just as soon wait until Marjorie comes.
Well, that makes it,
Okay then.
what's the map of?
It's a habitat map of Simsbury.
Okay, good.
Well, this is gonna be short.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Having no comments, I guess we'll move on with our agenda. To item number 3, the pesticide letter. Let's see. Don has drafted a letter to the first selectman regarding these pesticides in town and some of the issues that we have discussed in the past as a commission. Do you want to read the letter?
I could do. The commission, I believe, has all, maybe Jason didn't because he wasn't here, but this letter has been on the table at past meetings. It's addressed to Mr. Eric Wellman, the first selectman, and Mr. David Ryan, the president of the board of directors of the Performing Arts Center, and it reads, Dear Mr. Wellman and Mr. Ryan, the commission wrote to the then first selectwoman Hefner in 2015 and 2016 concerning the likely adverse environmental impacts of pesticide applications at Simsbury Meadows. We wrote in our advisory capacity as Conservation Commission, not in our regulatory capacity as Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency. We observed that distinction because we had been advised some years before by the then town staff that all regulation of pesticide application had been preempted by the state. Pardon me. Recently published authoritative scholarship has made clear that we were misinformed in that regard. Pesticides are not different from other material under state wetlands law and our town regulations. Unless it falls within a specific statutory exception, any application of pesticides in a wetland area, within 100 feet of a wetland area, or indeed in any other place where the application will affect wetlands is a regulated activity that requires a permit from this body. We remind you of the extensive wetlands in and abutting the Simsbury Meadows site and urge you to begin the application process well in advance if you should wish the commission to consider granting a permit. Very truly yours. And I've set this up for Marjorie's signature, but my suggestion would be that if the commission approves this evening, we change that to be with Jim's signature as vice chairman. So I will move that we accept this, and once you have a second, you can open it for discussion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Discussion? Mike?
Just two comments. Maybe, I know you're referencing the Janet Brooks article from
Yes.
Habitat, maybe attach it to the letter. So
Okay.
that you have that. And the only concern I have is the last portion, if you should wish the commission to consider granting a permit. It flirts with a perception of predetermination on granting a permit if it's after the fact. I would recommend.
Help me understand what you're saying.
Well, the only reason why is you're kind of, it sounds like you're saying, I won't issue a permit if you're not here prior to the activity. And I would, in fairness, if this was let's take the parties involved out of it. If this was just homeowner B, who just owns this property, as your staff, I advise you just if you're going, even be sending an advisory, a warning letter, basically. Don't go too far to give a perception that it could, if you're coming in after the fact, you're not getting an okay to do the activity. The only reason why is just, I don't want the commission to be placed in a position where someone may accuse a predetermined or biased process, that's all.
Okay, I appreciate that sentiment. You will appreciate that the town has a history, particularly at Simsbury Meadows, of having emergencies. A pothole that has sat there for 6 months, all of a sudden has to be dealt with on an emergency basis this week, and there's no time to come to the commission. We have been down this road with this applicant, or hoped for, or would-be applicant, before. And that's what was motivating my framing it in that way.
Understand?
All right, we want to urge you to be,
Just a suggestion, remember, I'm not
what do other people think about that?
commission's decision.
Well, I mean, the easy thing to do, I think, would be just to end the sentence after the word advance and remove, if you should wish the commission to consider granting a permit.
But if you urge you to begin the application process well in advance.
Period.
I'm not sure that
But-
addresses my concern very squarely. We could say, urge you to be mindful of the need for a permit, or some such thing.
I think that sounds,
Does that work as well for you?
Yeah, I mean, just the way it's written, I just, hearing you read it, that was my only concern. And like I said, I'm using it, I'm looking at it from, remove the property and individual, the parties that you're talking about, and if this was just a new application coming in, you know what I mean?
Would it be well in advance for the required permit?
The well in advance, I think, is what Mike is, that's kind of the nub of what, no?
No, it's just if you wish the commission to grant, what James kind of said, or hinted at earlier, just end the sentence at advance. I think that saves you from, it keeps you sounding neutral.
Okay,
It's just the if part, granting, you sound,
okay.
Yeah, but I was wondering, if you said well in advance for the required permit, is that making the statement, Don, that you're trying to think about, that there will be a required permit?
No, because you don't know that a permit will be required.
Okay,
We might conclude a permit is not needed.
Okay.
Based on the facts as stated.
okay,
But we do need an application.
okay, for the required application.
in advance of conducting the regulated activity? Because you're kind of.
You're presuming it's a regulated activity?
No, but I'm just, yeah, but I'm also saying that way, maybe that could,
Yeah, I mean, you could take another step back too and remind them that, the nature of this activity is such that it would be very difficult to grant a retroactive permit for the application of a pesticide, because there's really nothing that could be done to correct that application after the fact, which, makes this activity somewhat different than, a construction project in a wetland. And I think that would remain neutral and get to Don's point too about.
How about if we
reminder that we
say,
will not be issuing a retroactive permit.
urge you to be mindful of the regulatory timeframes and to begin the application process well in advance, period.
Sounds great.
That do it?
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. And okay to do this for Jim's signature?
I don't see any issue with it. I mean, it's a statement of fact.
Yeah.
There isn't particularly anything else that's going to change that statement of fact.
Right.
Okay. You have a motion.
All right.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Housekeeping, I will get a signature sample from the acting chairman this evening and have this to you electronically tomorrow.
Okay.
You can attach Janet's thing to the back,
I will be out tomorrow, so I'll get to it on Thursday when I return to the office.
That should be splendid.
Just one other thing, while we're on housekeeping. Right now, we have 4 vacancies on the commission. James, you missed this. Craig McCormick and Donna Feinstein resigned on Monday. So if you could just respond to when the agenda comes out, if you're planning on attending or not, just in fairness to some of the applicants, while we're running short, because we need 4 members to have a meeting. So if 2 people can't make a meeting, we don't have a quorum.
Okay.
And in fairness, like I said, if we have individuals who, like tonight, if they hired an engineer, a lawyer, attorney, et cetera, I'd prefer to give them a heads up rather than have to tell them at 5 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon that, by the way, or worse, that we come here and they paid for their professionals to come. I'm sorry to do it, just because we're short right now, that's why.
Okay.
Okay,
Did you have anything else?
sure.
Oh, of course.
The water shortage ordinance draft has been through a subcommittee of the Board of Selectmen, has been tweaked a little bit. Really, the only tweak of substance is that it adds the language that action will not be taken until it is decided that either voluntary actions have been tried and failed, or voluntary actions have been decided a priori to be insufficient under the circumstances. So it gives an extra, I thought that was implied, but it gives that extra bit of voluntariness at the front end. It will go to public hearing on the 8th of January. A good showing from the commission would be welcomed. It would be nice not to be the only commissioner speaking that evening. So you have a copy of it in your materials somewhere.
January 8th, you said?
Yep,
6 PM.
6 PM.
Sorry, okay.
And we have 2 new selectmen on the board who will not be familiar with this, so we need to do a little explaining, I think. And I was tempted to make some end-of-the-year remarks this evening, but I'll save them for next week, next time. Something to look forward to.
You gotta leave us in suspense, huh?
You have a sense of the subject matter.
Anything else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn?
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
do you have a blue pen?
I do.
All right.